Okay, it's thinking about it. All right, so we will go ahead and get started. Oh, I forgot to change the second slide. You know, it's all a work in progress. This is what you should be seeing, the March Madness for Essentials. But I didn't update the second slide. So it says Foundations, but this is actually for the Essentials program. We're going to be going through that. So if everybody could just put in the chat how many years you've been homeschooling, number of years in Classical Conversations, if you are in a Classical Conversations community. I think everybody that I talked to, I didn't talk to you, Tim, yet, but if I think everybody else is in a CC community, and then put your location. And if you don't feel like typing all that, like what brings you on the call today, but you could, and it'll pop up in my chat and I can see that. And that just kind of helps me consider who I have as an audience today. So my name is Krista Bottomley. I am your Kentucky book rep. And I have been book rep for about 2 years now, but previously I was a book rep in Pennsylvania. I did that for about 3 years, really, really loved it. I've been a Foundations and Essentials director. I've been a tutor for both Foundations and Essentials. And I've directed several of the challenge levels. But really my sweet spot is as a book rep. I really like supporting the leadership, and that just is what gets me excited. And I love books. So these are my kids. My oldest, you'll see there leaning on my youngest, is Reagan. She is a Challenge 4 graduate. She's never been in a school, except I think she watched a science presentation once at a school, but she has been homeschooled, I say, from birth. She's 23 now. She is about to graduate college. She goes to St. John's College, and she's one of the tops of her class. She's doing an excellent job. She's very happy. She loves the Lord. She is going to a secular school. And but I love that what CC does is it prepares them for wherever they're going to go, and that she sees the Lord's fingerprints even when they're, when she has secular professors talking to her. Then you see my son in the white shirt on the left. That is Sebastian. This is an outdated slide, but he is actually in Challenge B this year. The middle one there in the dark blue is Ransom. He is in Challenge A this year. And then Frederick is still in Foundations, but he'll be starting Essentials next year. Yeah, I think it's next year he's starting. So yeah, so I've seen where CC goes, but I also am still in the thick of it with my little one. We're really trying to get down our reading skills, things like that. And you'll see me, I'm going to look back and forth a lot. I have 2 screens. So when I'm looking here, I'm looking at you guys, but also over here, I just have a second screen. I'm still looking at you, but it looks like I'm looking back and forth a lot. Now, Amanda is also going to be on the call. She is our experienced Essentials tutor, and she's also been a challenge director. She'll give a little bit more of actually, Amanda, you want to just introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Amanda Robinson. I have been in CC since my oldest was in 4th grade. My oldest is now graduated out of Challenge 4 and is at school. At college, and my second son also graduated. He graduated out of Challenge 3 actually, and graduated a year early, and he is in college as well. One is in a Christian college, the other one's in a secular college, and they're both rocking it. My daughter, I have 2 daughters. One is 15 in Challenge 1, and the other one is in her 3rd tour of Essentials. So we're getting ready to have everybody in Challenge next year. I have tutored Essentials for 7 3/4 years now, because I just took over for somebody for 6 weeks for this last semester. So, and then I also directed Challenge 3 1 year, but Essentials is my sweet spot. I love Essentials. So that's me.
All right, awesome. And I was just reminding Amanda of when I first saw her. I was visiting Central Campus, and I sat in on her Essentials class, and I was like, because we needed to move around. We were doing a little shuffling and stuff. Just our families moved a good bit, as I've kind of explained a bit. But I saw her tutoring Essentials. I'm like, I'm at the right community. This is where I want to be, because she definitely knows the classical model. And I'm going to go over quite a bit of that and why it's so important to our program. So classical is not just in our name, like we really mean it. It really is very important to us. So, all right, with that, so this is our meeting agenda. I'm going to go through a lot of material, so I'll start talking pretty fast here. If I need to slow down, let me know. Some of it will be a review for you, and some of it will be new information to others. So just, if you've seen it all before, Be patient for those who need to hear it again. And you know what? It's good for all of us to hear different perspectives on what the classical model is. So, so we are going to talk about what contemporary education is versus classical education. And that's going to be, we're going to spend some time on that. And then Amanda's going to give her director's perspective. I'll give the book rep perspective. And then we also might have a student perspective in here if my daughter wants to come down. She might tell how Essentials has served her and her college education. Before I go any further, though, I'm going to stop and pray, just because I know I need to get my mind right and get my mind in the right frame to be leading people. So, all right, pray with me, please. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for what technology makes it so that we can get together, even though we're all over the place, we're all over the state, and doing different things, and just makes it so we can connect with one another. Father, help me be concise and clear in what I'm saying. Help me speak to the people that are in front of me right now, not to people who are in my imagination or people who don't, the theoretical person who could be on the other end. Help me to speak directly to the people that you have set before me. Help Amanda as well as she's going through it. Give her a clarity of mind and of purpose. Help the passion in her heart to come out clearly in the words that she speaks. Just bless everyone here in this call. And Lord, we love you. And thank you for bringing us all together tonight. Thank you. Amen. All right. So I'm going to go through, this is in this little tiny book here. Classical Education Made Approachable. So if you've seen this before, you'll recognize these images. Okay, so I'm going to be going through this pretty quick. So this is the modern education method. This is what all our public schools are, and you'll see that the student is at the center, and you'll see all these isolated little topics, subjects going around the side. You have history, science, language, fine arts, etc. But the student is at the center of education, and you'll see here everybody say, what do you want to do when you grow up? Or what are your goals? What do you want? Or it might be about, even if you're a private school, they might say, well, what are the parents' goals? But essentially, man is at the center. Also, if you're in a government school, the center of the things is the goal that the government wants. They want you to be a good citizen. They want you to be prepared for the workforce, things like that. But ultimately, man is at the center. Then you get into a poor Christian education. I mean, like, I'm not saying that they're poor, like they mean badly. They are earnestly trying to do their best, but basically they just replicate that model. But you'll see they tack on Bible study. There might be a Bible class, maybe daily, maybe just once a week, or they might have a chapel service. But essentially, the student is still at the center. Mankind is still at the center. And you have these isolated subjects circling around him. Now you get a good Christian education, and they rightfully remove man from the center of everything and put God there. Instead of saying, well, what do you want to do with your life? The topic becomes, what does God have planned for you? What has God designed you for? And what purpose does he have for your education? But because God created everything, it says that all the subjects essentially come from the mind of God. Now, a great Christian education says that because everything came from the mind of God, everything also points back to him in some way. In that you can see his fingerprints of the creator. The creator made our universe, and therefore we should see little hints of him hidden throughout creation in all the different subjects that we study. Then what changes is you get to a classical education, and I wish I had an eraser so that I could just erase all the lines around the different subjects there, because in a classical education, all the subjects interrelate to each other, and they're not these isolated pockets. They're all interwoven within one another. So when I'm studying history, I also I would also run into fine arts. And as I'm studying fine arts, I realize that that's actually a reflection of the philosophy of the time. And even in math, I see the fingerprints of God, but I also see that mathematics has a historical background in the time and place that it came from, and in the civilization that it came from. And it also said something about the philosophy of the culture that developed some of the math. So that makes for a great classical Christian education. And that's where you see, like CC, if everybody's seen this, the catechesis wheel, now that what we do, we change, and we no longer have subjects there in those isolated pockets. We have what we call strands. You'll see in the middle there, instead of history, math, science, etc., we have exposition, grammar, debate, research, reasoning, and logic. Okay, and all those center around God. Right. So All right, I'm going to get back to that in a little bit. So I'm going to talk about the trivium. So classical education is a lot of things. It is a method. It is a form of educate. It's also subjects, classical subjects, etc. But we're going to talk about a method of learning. So anytime you want to learn anything, you have to start the best way. So let me back up a second. So classical education there's always been different forms of education throughout all of time. Okay. But the type of education that has stood the test of time is classical education. And so this model, we believe, if you look back at all the successful civilizations and how they were teaching, they had other methods that we don't talk about anymore, but the ones that actually continued on and proved successful were following a basic classical education method. And that is because the natural organic way to learn. So whenever you're going to learn anything new, you're going to start soaking in all what we call the grammar. It's the basic knowledge, the facts, the names, the dates. It's the basic information of any subject. Then you get into the dialectic is when you start asking questions about those things and saying, okay, I know about all these things, but why does that matter? And how does that correlate to each other? And then once you build you have your knowledge, and then you start to understand the things that you have knowledge about, and then you actually put it into practical application, and you start using those things that you've learned about to apply and bless others, and hopefully teach others about those things. So, and that's where you say you bear fruit and wisdom through that. And that Lee Bortons has this saying, good education should make it so that by the end of your classical education, well, it's an ongoing process. The goal is to learn to name like Adam, to ask questions like Jesus, and to persuade like Paul. Now we find that not only, and anytime we learn a subject, I'm gonna back up here. Anytime we learn something, so like, let's say I'm going to learn gardening, I need to start off by knowing, what are the different types of plants, what plants work at different seasons. I need to know what my basic tools, so that if I say to one of my kids, go get me a hoe, he doesn't come back and bring me a shovel. He needs to know the basic types of the words, the names that apply to the thing. But then the dialectic would be where you actually figure out, okay, so what happens when I try to plant tomatoes in March? Well, they're going to die. You can plant peas in March, but tomatoes need to wait until it's a little bit warmer. So you're learning how to actually do the thing. And then with the rhetorical stage, you're actually growing the tomatoes, making spaghetti sauce, and actually able to bless others with what you have learned. Now we find that those stages also correlate to natural childhood development. These things we find that kids generally follow this process, so that young children, like my little Frederick over here, and Haley's kids that are playing with her, they're naturally focused on the grammar stage. They're asking a lot of questions. What's this? What's that? And they just soak up information like little sponges. And they could memorize a whole bunch of stuff about like who the SpongeBob characters are, or what are kids watching these days, like Paw Patrol or whatever. They could learn all the characters to some cartoon show, or they would be just as happy learning like who Napoleon was, or they might want to know who Charlemagne is. So giving them good stuff to memorize and know, and good things to know the names of, is far better if we give them a good feast of good ideas, things to memorize. But then you'll find they get to those middle years, and it's what Dorothy Sayers calls the pert stage. It's when they get a little sassy. It's your classic teenager who's arguing back, and they're sassing you, and they're saying, well, how do you know that? And oh, I know you say this, but is that true? And that's my two middle boys. They are definitely dialectic right now. But what they're doing now is they have all this information. Okay, so like they might have memorized that, yeah, Napoleon was in France doing this over here, and yes, there's Thomas Jefferson over here, and he was related to the Louisiana Purchase. But they start saying, wait a minute, those happened roughly at the same times. How is that related to each other? And after we have some discussions and we kind of tease things out a little bit, they realize, oh, the reason that Thomas Jefferson was able to make the Louisiana Purchase at such a good price was because Napoleon was trying to fund his wars in Europe. So Napoleon has a lot to do with the Louisiana Purchase, and you start putting ideas together and understanding a bigger picture of the world. Okay. Then they get a little bit older. This is often around the later high school years, also going into college and then on into adulthood, is where they get it's what Dorothy Sayers calls the poetic stage. They really just like are gushing to express themselves. They want to say something. They want to tell you what they think. They want to start applying what they've learned to something practical in real life. And when kids get off to college, if they haven't been through a classical education, if they haven't soaked in good, true facts, good information, and they haven't learned to wrestle with these ideas and think logically about them, they will get off into college and they'll just start spewing whatever nonsense. Like they have this urge to express. And that's where you see like college campuses are a hotbed for like riots and arguments and all these things that kids say, but we have not taught them the words to express themselves or taught them how to think clearly about it. They're going to go on campus and it's just going to be kind of the chaos that sometimes we see. So CC is really, in the classical model, is aiming to give good information, like a bedrock of solid information, teach them how to discuss and argue with these ideas and think clearly about them so that they can go into the world and express and be equipped with good ideas to share with others. All right, so that goes back to our catechesis wheel. You see, if you go around the edge here, you'll see this all over CC stuff, but you see there on the right, and there's grammar, and it goes around into the dialectic stage, the rhetoric stage, and we call that doxology. Doxology is an echo and celebration. And I'm going to use a little metaphor that I often think of when I'm thinking of doxology. So my daughter one time, she was learning how to play piano, and she called me over to it really, really excited because at the same time, I think she was in Challenge 2 and she was learning about music theory. And she called me over and she's like, Mom, come here, look inside the piano. And I was like, oh, sweetie, I know how piano works, but you can show me, that's fine. And she said, no, Mom, that's not what I'm talking about. I want you to notice something. And she opened the top of the piano and she's like, watch, I'm going to hit this note. And she hit middle C. I was like, yes, yep. And I see the hammer hit on middle C and there it's vibrating. She's like, no, look at the other keys. And as I looked around the piano, I'm like, oh, there's other strings vibrate. Not all of them. It was every 8 strings. There would be a vibrating string. I was like, that's interesting. What's going on there? She's like, watch this. So she hit the damper. They all stopped. And she hit D really hard. And lo and behold, all of the D strings started vibrating. And they were echoing in a harmonic. That's what harmonics is about. And that there is sort of like a vibration that happens and it catches on to the same strings throughout the piano. So then she ran off and got her violin and she's like, check this out. And she drew her bow across and I'm looking at her, waiting to see something. She says, no, Mom, look in the piano and see what happens. And she did it again. And even though she hadn't touched the piano, the strings in the piano were vibrating along with the music of the violin at the same note. And that's what we call resonance. And that resonance is really that echoing and celebration, where when we see things, as we study things, we see things throughout creation, and we start to see these fingerprints of God. And when we hear truth, there is something in a Christian mind. I don't know if non-believers feel it too, but I think it's the Holy Spirit. Like there is something that echoes in resonance with the Lord and seeing him throughout creation. And I think that is what CC is trying to teach our students, and they're doing it very well. And I see it wonderfully in my daughter's education. So let me talk a little bit about the history. We'll run through a few more things and I'll try to pick up speed. So there you see the grammar, dialectic, rhetoric. This is Lee Bortons. She is the founder. When she started CC, she was not originally a Christian, but when she started homeschooling, she was not a Christian. She came to faith through homeschooling because of what she saw as she studied. But she started this about 25 years ago. Now she has 4 sons, and she actually developed the challenge level, the high school levels first, and then realized that she hadn't necessarily prepared her oldest set of kids as well as she would have liked. She had her kids in 2 pairs. She had oldest 2 and then some later ones. And so she started working backwards. How can I get my kids more prepared for what I expect of them? And so then she developed the Foundations and Essentials program. So keep in mind when Essentials is developed, this is not like some elementary school program where we're just kind of, hoping to shoot somewhere someday. It is very intentionally done to equip the kids, the students, with tools to succeed when you get to the challenge levels. All right, so our mission in CC, I know a lot of you guys know this, but I'm going to cover it anyway. Just keep in mind, if you ever feel frustrated with something that's going on, this is what your leadership uses as our core anchoring stuff. We're going to go over some of this. So our mission is to know God and make him known. That means our goal, our mission at CC is not that your kids get good jobs. It is not that this is not vocational training. I think that your kids will have good vocation someday, and this is an excellent equipping for that. But our ultimate goal in everything is that we would know God through our studies and that we would make him known to others. And I think that'll appeal to the world if we do that successfully. So our vision at Classical Conversation is that Classical Conversations fulfills this mission by curating curriculum, providing services, and equipping parents to build flourishing homeschool communities. Who is the target? When I read this statement, I want you to think of who is the target. It's not talking about students. It's talking about parents. It is about equipping parents to raise their children and to educate their children well. So bear in mind, when you're sitting in community, you are the target there, not the student. We are using your students to equip you, and we're modeling things to your student, but you need to understand that you are the goal. All right, so we're going to do that. Oh, I lost my screen. Okay, so part of our vision is we hope you will join us as we pursue truth, embrace stewardship, act with courage, preserve freedom, and do hard things. And so because you guys are the ultimate teachers and you are our target, sometimes things will get hard, especially your first year in Essentials. It will seem hard. It will feel overwhelming and confusing. But we do believe that when we act with courage and push through that and trust in the Lord to equip us, that you would be amazed what you can do. It's just FYI, I am not a college graduate. And yet I feel like what CC has done for me is redeem my own education so that I have some people pretty well fooled that I have a good education, but really it's CC that taught me things. Okay, so there's 3 pillars of CC, as you all know. We are Christian, we are classical, and we are community. So with a Christian education, we believe the purpose of education is to know God and make him known. We believe that God trusts parents with their children, and so should we, and that wrestling with truth promotes blessing and virtue for the whole community. And that wrestling with truth goes right along with that doing hard things. Okay? We believe that we are meant to do this in community, and that education is the responsibility of the family with the support from fellow believers. Your closest community is in your family, and then spread out from there is your Christian community. The support of community enhances our ability to fulfill parental duties, and the accountability of community both sharpens and humbles its members. Some people don't like that humbling part. I know for myself, I have had a number of times in community where I have been humbled by what happens in community sometimes, but then I am always grateful as I come through that. So it is humbling to sit in an Essentials class for the first time, I got to tell you. All right, and then we are classical. So we believe that classical education embodies the most natural skills for learning. Truth is required to inculcate wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. And then classical education prepares us to accept the responsibilities of Christian freedom. I could go on about that, but we're going to keep moving. So our core values, we use the metaphor or the acronym GUIDE. We believe your leadership is held to this standard. So you need to understand that this is where leadership is coming from. We believe we are guided by our core values using grace in speech, humility of mind, integrity in action, diligence in work, and excellence in results. All right, so let's see. Let me just kind of scroll through my slides here really quick and see if I need to pick up the pace. Okay, so I'm just harkening back and reminding you, we talked about the arts of the trivium. I'm going to hit these really fast. So there's 5 main skills of the grammar stage: the naming, attending, memorizing, expressing, and storytelling. We really focus on with the young children. We're going to be doing quite a bit of that in Essentials. Like what kind of word is this? We see this word. Is it a noun, adjective, pronoun, etc.? We need to be able to name. We also have to wrestle with attending. Sometimes it's hard to sit in class, but we need to learn to attend. Memorizing, expressing, storytelling, etc. Sure, Amanda can tell more about how that works out. But the dialectic stage, they are kind of pushing a little bit. They're just kind of like easing a little into this dialectic stage around this age. And they will start working on the skills of definition, comparison, relationship, circumstance, and testimony. And if you come to Parent Practicum, we're going to go more in detail about these. And then the 5 canons of rhetoric: invention, arrangement, elocution, memory, and delivery. They will actually start doing they'll be dabbling with some of these skills when they start presenting their papers in Essentials class. So this is the full catechesis wheel, and what it's doing here is expressing that the foundations, essentials, and then the challenge program kind of fits into all that. So, all right, so this is our scope and sequence. You'll see at the top of this, you have our strands. This is just arranged in a slightly different way. For the foundations and essentials here, you can see how that fits in with exposition, grammar, logic. I'm not going to go into this a whole lot today, but if you come to practicum, we do talk more about how these strands work together to teach our students the skills that they need. All right, I'm going to let Amanda take off from there.
All right.
Some tea.
Awesome. Okay, so essentials, this is what you guys came for. What are you getting into with essentials? Ultimately, you know, we talked about how God is in everything, and you might come into essentials going, we're just learning grammar and writing. How is that related to the Lord? But I've had some of our best theological discussions in essentials class. And one of the first things that I tell people is that why do we need to study grammar? Why do we need to study writing? Because God obviously thinks that language and words are important, because when he created the world, God spoke. So that tells us something. And the ways in which the gospel is spread is through the written word in the Bible and through the spoken word as people evangelize and tell people the gospel. And so we need to know how to use words correctly and use them persuasively. So essentials is sort of like our jumping off point for that. So that's, I could go on about that. I love essentials and everything that it teaches us, and I'll have another story to share later about some things we learned about God through grammar. So the first thing that this shows is the parent-student relationship, parent-student and tutor relationship. So essentials is not a place where you're going to come in and just be a room parent. You're not going to sit in the back and let me teach them and then go home and let them go off and work on their own and then come back to class. This class is as much for them as it is for you. You are going to come and I am going to model a lesson, or your tutor is going to model a lesson for you on grammar and model the lesson on writing, show you how you can teach this at home. And then you are going to go home and in your materials for essentials, there will be lessons for you to do at home with your student. Now, they are laid out very easily for you so that you can follow them. They tell you, like, script-wise what to say, what to ask, and what your students' answers should be. So this is not hard, but you do have to be involved. So when you come to class, you would be expected to maybe have read your lesson ahead of time. You can ask questions too. So the tutor is there to model for both of you. You go home, work with your student, and the tutor is there then as a resource for you throughout the week if you have questions while you're trying to work with your student. It's really beautiful how this works, and parents love it because they learn things that they never learned in high school. I know I learned a ton. Just teaching this class. I had to start researching a lot of things because parents would ask really good questions. So now when people ask questions and they're like, wow, you know the answers to a lot of things, I'm like, that's because somebody at some point asked and I had to find out. But it's good because we're also teaching our students that we don't know everything and that we know how to find information too, and that we're not scared to not know. So that's a very good thing for them to see as well. Okay, so on Community Day, in Essentials, this happens for kids who reach that 9 to 12-year-old range. It's going to go right along with Foundations, 24 weeks. We'll meet after Foundations and lunch from 1 to 3. Any students that you have that are only in Foundations and not in Essentials will probably go to some sort of an aftercare program that your community will provide. But, okay. In Essentials on Community Day, there are 3 components to Essentials. There is the English grammar, which is 45 minutes. The math program is about 30 minutes, and then writing is another 45 minutes. So these are three very distinct strands, just like in foundations, where you've got very distinct time sections. We do 30 minutes here, 30 minutes there. We have the same thing where we're watching the clock. And we might have to stop early on a grammar lesson because it's math time. In which case, guess what? You have the same lesson in your Essentials of the English Language program that I'm teaching from. And so you can go in and read that and see anything that I might not have gotten to, and you can reach out to me during the week and I can help you out with that. But for the most part, most of us generally can get through most of what you need in that time. We are leading you guys, parents and students, through dialectic discussions about grammar. Now, this is where that bridge to essential between foundations and challenge starts, because we are pulling everything that they memorized in foundations for English grammar, and now we're teaching them how to use it so that they can find information. And why do you need to know what a preposition is? Well, you need to be able to identify prepositions. Why? Because then you can identify objects of the preposition. Well, why do I need that? Because you remember in Latin and foundations when you learned all those noun endings? One of those noun endings goes on the end of prepositions in Latin that you're going to learn in challenge. You need to be able to find an object of the preposition so you know which word needs that ending. So this is a real bridge. It's really awesome to see this because they don't even know where they're going, but you do. And so you know that these things are important for them. So it's a lot of fun to see that, but the dialectic part in Essentials is going to look more like me asking questions and them answering questions based on things that the tutor has taught them. It's also going to look like you parents asking questions and me answering questions for you. So it's a back and forth. Now, when they get to challenge, the dialectic might look more like a conversation where there's a big question thrown out and now they get to wrestle with it. But they learned how to start that in Essentials just through our conversations about English grammar. So we are modeling for you because guess what? You're going to go home and you're going to ask your students the exact same questions, but it's going to be on a script, so you don't need to worry. Okay, so in class, we have the Essentials of the English Language, which is CC curriculum, and it's going to have each week's lesson laid out for you, exactly what I'm going to teach. So you can read it ahead of time. We hope you'll read it ahead of time. You'll come into class and you'll know exactly where I'm going. If you've had questions when you were reading it and I don't end up answering it in class, then you can ask me right there in class. I love having conversations with parents in class in front of their students because their students are seeing, oh, my mom didn't know that either, but she wasn't afraid to ask. Well, then maybe I'm not afraid to ask either. We're going to go over, they've got a whole list of things on this list. I mean, there's just a ton of stuff, but really they're going to learn the basics of English grammar. And in doing that, we're actually prepping them to learn Latin and really any other language because all languages have the same basics that you need to know. So we're prepping them for that as they go. Sorry, I want to make sure I'm not getting past. Okay. In the writing section, they're going to use the Institute for Excellence in Writing, the history-based writing lessons. Now, each year, this is a 3-tour program. I'm sorry, I should have said that. They'll go through Essentials 3 times. They'll do the exact same thing every year. This is where the classical part comes in, because that first year is going to feel like a fire hose. And then the second year, they're going to hear all the same stuff, and they're going to go, oh, wait, I remember part of that. And then the third year, they're going to go through and they're going to be like, oh, I know so much. And they're going to feel really confident. You're going to do the same thing. The Essentials of the English Language lessons are exactly the same each time. The only thing that changes in IEW is the source texts that they write from. And those source texts are just going to reflect the period that we're in for foundations that year. So we have ancient history, medieval based, and American American history. So that's the only thing that's going to change is the source text they write from. But they are going to learn 9 different units on how to write various structures, various types of papers. They are going to have those things modeled for them, and we're going to start at the very basic level of here's a paragraph, a very simple paragraph. You're going to write a keyword outline where you're going to just take the important words from each sentence and put this in an outline. Then you're going to put away the source text. And now you're going to write a paragraph. You're going to rewrite that paragraph based on your keywords. And you know what we're teaching them? We're teaching them how to not plagiarize. We're teaching them how to take a model and then rewrite that. And they're learning to put words into sentences. And they're learning how to make things sound good and structure things properly. Because did you know it's really hard sometimes for students to put their thoughts into complete sentences? It took me a little while to realize that. I had one of my children who that was really hard for. And this keyword outline was great because we practice it at home. Okay, here are your keywords. Let's put it into a sentence. You can't figure that out? Let me put it into a sentence. Now you repeat the sentence. And let's put it down. And this is where parents come in because you are helping them by modeling for them the same way that I model for them in class. So we are actively involved in modeling and in asking questions and teaching them to do this. They're going to come out of IEW knowing how to write a variety of papers from informative to creative to a critique to a research paper. They're going to learn how to do a variety of things, and then they're going to go to challenge. And they're going to write their papers for challenge, having that foundations and essentials of knowing that they confidently know how to write a paper. Now, you might think in challenge they use a different writing curriculum, LTW. That doesn't mean that IEW is not important. In IEW, they're learning how to do keyword outlines and then write a paper. They're going to use that same technique when they're doing papers in challenge. They're going to directly use IEW methods when they do research papers, from their short ones in Challenge A to their long ones in Challenge 1. They're going to use stylistic techniques that they learn in Essentials, how to make their writing interesting by using different sentence openers and different dress-ups and decorations. And they're going to use that when they get to challenge in all of their papers in order to make their writing sound interesting and sound professional, and even to make it more persuasive. So everything they learn in IEW is going to carry forward into challenge. And then we have the math. And you might think, why in the world are we throwing math into the middle of this? Well, besides the fact that between grammar and writing, you really need something fun and energetic so that you don't fall asleep by the end of the day because they're not used to sitting still for that long. The math games are meant to increase the students' speed and accuracy in math. So when they get to challenge, they're going to be starting to get into upper level math. In Essentials, we're just trying to help them to optimize their math skills so that they can go into those upper levels of math, knowing their multiplication facts, knowing their addition and subtraction, and knowing how to do lots of different combinations of numbers, and having played different math games that lets them play with numbers in different ways and see numbers in different ways, so that they're prepared for those upper level math classes. So math is a lot of fun. A lot of times it's some students' favorite section of Essentials, but we try to keep it interesting. Okay, so the Essentials of the English Language. This is our first 45 minutes in grammar. The tutor is, again, we're going to lead the parents. We're going to be basically using the students to show you how to do this at home, okay? We're going to ask questions and teach the students how to ask questions to find truth. And that's what I tell my students all the time. We are asking questions to find truth, and asking questions so that we can figure things out that maybe look really hard, but we might know more than we think we do. So let's see what we know and see if we can maybe figure out some of these things that we don't know based on what we know. So for example, looking at a really long, complex sentence, and we're asking them to parse this sentence and what are all the different parts of speech and what noun jobs is everything doing and how are we going to diagram this? They might look at a really long sentence and say, oh my goodness, it's too long, it's too complicated, I can't do it. We teach them how to take something long and complicated, and well, let's break it down. Do you see an independent clause, like one little sentence there that could stand on its own? No. Okay, well, do you see a subject and a verb? Yeah, that's probably part of a clause. Okay, now can we see the sentence that it's a part of? Yeah, okay, we found a clause. Is there another one? Yes. Okay, we have two. Well, let's separate those out and let's tackle one at a time. This isn't just teaching them how to find the parts of speech for Latin. We're also teaching them not to be scared of something that looks complicated. And that's going to help them in challenge when they come to a project and they go, oh, that's a big project. And we go, oh, just break it down. And they'll be like, yeah, I've done that before. They did that in Essentials. Whenever they came to a big sentence or a big paper, and we said, just break it down. So that's it. It seems like maybe it's simple, you know, why are we doing this? But it really has a lot of crossover into things that they do later, teaches them skills with something easy. So as they progress and get to harder things, they realize they have the skills to tackle those things. Okay. In math, the students are practicing their basic math facts. Our favorite game is Board Slam. That is a really fun game. So they have a board that has the numbers 1 through 36, and then they have 3 dice, and they roll them, and they use those 3 numbers that they get on their dice, and they make math equations to try to get different answers so that they can knock all the numbers off of their board. And we teach them how to use exponents, which may be a new skill that they don't know how to use, and we teach them how to use those. We teach them about order of operations, which may be something that they haven't practiced a whole lot in math, but now it makes a difference because you've got 3 numbers you're putting into this equation. It also teaches them there are multiple ways to get to somewhere. A lot of times we'll have students put different equations on the board that all add up to the same number. And so it teaches them there's more than one way to skin a cat. We can do this in different ways, and they start to learn to play with numbers. And we have so much fun with math. We do a lot of like speed things. We do some things together in pairs. But students, my hope is that they, at the end, will learn to love math time. And they will improve their speed and accuracy as they're doing it. But they're having fun while they do it. Okay, and I had already mentioned that that is preparing them for their upper level math when they get to challenge. So, all right, writing. All right, I have a special place in my heart for this section because this is the whole reason that my family started doing classical conversations. My son, my oldest, was going into the 4th grade and he didn't know how to write. Now, I was a good writer. I am a good writer, but I sort of came into it naturally and I was like, I don't know how to teach this. And when he tries to write 2 sentences, he cries. So I'm not sure how to do this. Well, I found Teaching Writing with Structure and Style, and then I found out CC taught it, and I was like, great, I'll just let them do it. So I joined CC. Little did I know they were actually teaching me, but it worked out well. I became an Essentials tutor, and now I teach other parents. So they use Teaching Writing with Structure and Style. Now, you look at it this way. They have a binder, a Teaching Writing with Structure and Style binder, and you have videos that you watch with your community. And that is like the game instructions. So you don't want to skip this part. Don't skip watching the Pudawa videos, and don't skip opening up your binder and looking what's in there, because this is the game instructions. Anybody can play Monopoly just by opening it up and just try to figure it out, but you're not going to play it quite right unless you've read the instructions. So it's really important. And then we will also have the source texts in the Institute for Excellence in Writing, historical-based text writing sources. So that's where you'll get your source text from that your student is going to use as they're going through each unit. There are 9 units. We start small with a keyword outline. We go a little bit bigger into informative writing. Then they're going to go back and forth between informative and creative writing, because some people like one, some people like another, and both are important. So they're going to retell a narrative story. They're going to then, in the creative side, they're going to learn to write from pictures. And then they're going to progress to writing just from a prompt. We don't start them out, tell me about your favorite holiday, because they're like, I don't know how to write that. But we start them out, here's a story, listen to the story. Now rewrite the story, just based on what you remember, just write the story, but here's the structure. And then we bring them to, well, now you've got pictures and you can write from these pictures. So you still got some input here, but we teach them how to ask questions to pull information from the pictures to write from. And then we give them a writing prompt and we say, now ask questions and just pull things out of your brain. But we progress them through slowly so they learn how to do that. Now on the informative side, what we're leading up to is research papers. So they will, at the end, learn to write a research paper, which is the next slide. Whoop, I did that wrong. There we go. The capstone event. They write at the end a 5-paragraph research paper about some person in that who lived during that time period that we're in. So if we're in ancient history, there is a time period they're given. Pick somebody, anybody from that time period. It could be somebody that they already know and love. It could be somebody that they're interested in. We want them to want to read about them. And then they will learn, we will teach them over 3 weeks how to write a research paper. And at the end, they'll come out with this wonderful 5-paragraph paper that you would never have believed at the beginning of the year that your child could write. And it's going to sound amazing because they've added in all of their dress ups and sentence openers and decorations that they've learned throughout the year. And then they get to dress up as the person that they wrote about, and they get to present their paper. Now, how that looks from community to community can look differently. Some have the students read it just within community on that last day. Some communities will have a whole separate event that families come to, and they'll have a little dinner or whatever. But in the end, all the students will get an opportunity to dress up and read their paper and present what they've learned. I found this really interesting because my son, who I told you we started Essentials, we started CC because he hated writing. His second year in CC, he asked me if he could put an extra paragraph in his Faces of History paper because there was something else, another topic he wanted to cover. And that floored me as a mom to be like, this is where we got to. He hated writing and now he's asking to write more. But it was because now he understood how to write and he understood what I was asking of him, and he knew it wasn't hard because we had taught him that it's easy. And that's one of the things we do in writing with structure and style is easy +1. So they will use these varieties of papers when they go into challenge. But I wanted to end with this one little story that happened in class during these past 6 weeks when I was filling in. And this question comes up every year in grammar section when I'm teaching. We do something called quid et quo, where we take all the words in the sentence and we've parsed them out and we say, okay, this word is a noun. Tell me everything we could know about it. Is it singular or plural? Is it common or proper? Is it collective? Is it compound? Is it concrete or abstract? Well, I always put up a sentence that has the word God in it. And then students always ask, because I'll be like, okay, let's do this one. And they'll go, is God singular or plural? Now, I could just tell them, but it's much more fun to ask questions. So I ask them, well, I don't know. What do you think? What do you know? What does scripture say about God? Well, it says serve the Lord your God, not gods. And there is a plural form of God, and that's gods. We don't have that. And it says, love the Lord your God. And it says, hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one. I think we need to remember that. So we'll put that up there. All right, it's singular. And they'll ask, well, is God concrete or abstract? Well, you tell me. What is a concrete noun? Now they've learned this by this time. Well, it's something you can experience with your five senses. Okay. Has anybody ever seen God? Ooh, well, Moses saw his back. Well, he was up on the mountain. Moses passed by and he saw his back. Ooh. Has anybody ever heard God? Yeah, we can go back to Moses again, or quite a few other people who have heard God. Has anybody ever touched God? Jesus was God in flesh on earth. Okay, so we can pretty much say that God is concrete, can't we? And this is just one of the ways that we use English grammar to show them that you ask questions, you find truth. So I think that that is the end of what I have for you. So if you want to take it away, Krista.
And I took some notes. Oh, I'm echoing.
That's not a very good sign.
Okay, so somebody asked what date they should be 9 by, and
September
thanks
30th.
to Haley. Yeah, September 30th. Haley helped me out with that. Yeah, technically it's September 30th. Sometimes there's a little bit of wiggle room there on that. Also, I've delayed putting a student in because one of my boys just wasn't going to be. It wasn't going to be right to put him in it yet. He just language. He was a little bit more slower with language, and I think that was the right choice. That just because they turn 9 doesn't mean you have to send them in there, but you are putting them on a certain trajectory for like when they start Challenge A, et cetera. They should have 3 years of essentials ideally. So kind of keep that in mind. So, and most kids, a lot of times parents will be intimidated by essentials and think my child isn't ready yet. And so we'll delay putting them in, but usually most kids can do well with that. My son, we had some special circumstances because he has health issues that held back his education. And then the other question we're going to cover in a little bit, we're going to cover the materials that you'll need for essentials in just a little bit. For now, though, we're going to do a student perspective. So my daughter, she's not an essential student right now.
No, a little.
She's a little older than that. And I think my microphone works funny. I have to kind of like aim it at her. So if you guys can't hear, I think so. Yeah.
It's rare that people say they can't hear me. Usually
Yes.
I'm too loud.
Reagan is she's very good at speaking and making sure
Loud,
that she is
yeah.
heard. So
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to ask her some questions, and if anybody else has any questions, you can unmute and ask. We don't want to take up too much time on this section, though. So, but how would you say that Essentials has prepared you for what you're doing in college?
Okay. I'm a senior in college. That's where we are.
Mhm.
I think really it's helped me a lot with writing. Both the English section and the IEW section have helped me with writing. A lot of people will get to college and be like, I haven't written a long essay before, longer than like 2 pages, or I haven't like had to diagram a sentence. So I'm throwing commas in here because they look great to me, but I don't really know where commas go and I don't know what they do. And there's a semicolon that you can use sometimes. And I think something that really helped me out of Essentials is I had a strong grasp on English, which really helped me writing and articulating myself. It also helped a lot when I did Latin in Challenge and then when I did Biblical Greek and French in college, because I know what are all of these pieces of language that all of these languages have. So my English preposition looks like this. This is how it matches over to this Greek preposition, etc. And I mean, like, fantastically helpful having all of that basis in English. And I still I don't quite use keyword outlines, but I still outline the same way that IEW has you do in a couple of ways. And I still think of, oh, I have to use strong verbs. I can't use say, said, or something like that. all the time, which is also super helpful. So it's just been drilled into me so much because I think I did it for 3 years. Is that right?
Mhm.
I think I did it for 3 years. I don't know. That's just really helpful.
And then, and how do you think, I don't know if the mic hits me, but how do you think that it helps you when you're reading really complex literature? Things like you're reading Nietzsche, Hegel, all sorts of philosophers right now. You're reading Einstein's theories. How does it help you when there's really long, complicated ideas and sentences? How is it helping you with that?
Well, I'm not sure anything can help you with Hegel in particular, but he's bad. So, in general, I think there are philosophers can't write. So taking a really big, complicated sentence that they built and being like, okay, I need to find the verb in this because I don't know what you're talking about. And generally, okay, there's two things here. There's people who have very good ideas but are very bad at writing them. And even like Aristotle in translation is hard. And so being able to pick apart the sentence, being like, what is he actually talking about, is really helpful. That's one thing. And then there's the people who can really write. I'm reading Moby Dick for language class right now. Herman Melville can write a sentence. And you sit here and you realize nobody can write sentences like he can anymore. I mean, his language is beautiful. And it's because he was trained in English in a way that I'm guessing people aren't. I don't know. I didn't have an education that wasn't mine. So, and realizing that his ability to write came out of a really solid, strong understanding of the English language. And that if I want to be able to write like him, I have to study language like he did. And so it's both good for understanding the people who their sentences are hard and good for helping one learn to imitate the people who really can write and write well.
All right. Very good.
I talk a lot. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. So,
I'm sorry.
all right. She's like me. If anybody knows me well, I talk.
I'm
a lot.
more talkative than she is.
Yeah, believe it or not. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next section.
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions for Reagan and anything in particular?
Can I plug my college? I won't plug my college.
She goes to St. John's College. I think I already told you folks about that. Lee Borton's also plugs her college. It is a secular school, but it is a classical school, and they expect you to read really hard stuff and a lot of it. And they also expect you to self-teach. So like you have to learn to read French basically over the summer well enough that you can read Tocqueville. You read Tocqueville?
Not in French. We read a lot of plays and a lot of poetry.
Okay.
Read Montesquieu.
Okay.
Pascal.
So, but the CC prepared her for that. So she wanted to plug her college. So
it's good
yeah.
college. It's like CC for college kids.
Yep. All right.
Okay. Anyways, goodbye.
Thanks so much.
I'm getting the nice knee tap of go away now.
Oh, no. Oh, wait, one other thing. Sorry, one other thing. Would you feel like CC has given you a kind of, so we always talk about the community aspect, but I'm wondering, have you found that has branched out into, do you find CC students other places?
Yeah, there's a bunch at my college, incidentally. There's also, I'm gonna sit back down to the 12-foot screen. I've like run into them in Switzerland when I went there between college and high school. I run into them around, I've met them in DC. Yeah, I mean, I have a friend who like sporadically texts me every few months, like a card off the Timeline song. And then I have to, of course, I know the next thing in the Timeline song because it never leaves your brain. And so we go back and forth like that. But there's just a lot of CC connection that I've found.
So it is that community. We talk about community, but I couldn't overemphasize, it is more than just the community. What we call CC community is your home community. Reagan also texts me all the time about the things that she's learning. We have a shared community because of what we've learned together. But then she also has a worldwide community with fellow believers because of a classical education through CC. So, okay, we're going to go and talk about products, and I'm going to try to make this quick because I know that we need to hit through. Everybody needs to get our kids in bed and such. So, all right, you're good.
Okay.
All right, so reminding us of our scope and sequence and where we are in this. I'm not going to go over the strands. This is more for challenge level, but this is something that would be good to screenshot. But there is a purpose behind the strands. It is not simply to acquire knowledge to puff up. It is more to apply skills for discovering truth. So, all right. So if you have your catalog, it's awesome to like take notes in here or make. A lot of people are like, oh, I wish I'd written that down. If you don't have your catalog, that's fine. And I will be sending out the recording of this to help remind anybody. So as you're going through your catalog, I'm going to go back a slide. So this is like, this is what the digital, you can also go on the website and look for digital copies of this. You'll find that if you hover over one of these and click on it, you'll get to the bookstore main page. So for example, that would be this Amusing Ourselves to Death. Love this book, by the way. But if you scroll down on the website, you'll get down to where there's a video we call the Words Aptly Spoken Book Club, and it'll give you more information about these books. And there's a 45-minute long talk. Usually it's Lee Borton's and some of the leadership in C. A lot of the people who develop our curriculum are on there, and they're having a book talk about some of our books, especially our parent resources. So sometimes if you're on the fence about buying a book, particularly the parent resources, sometimes watching that, although be careful if you watch this one, you will buy it because it is pretty good. So I'm going to talk about parent resources for a little bit about what can help you with essentials. I already mentioned this little book that we have. I love to throw this around. And like to grandparents are great. Husbands that might not necessarily be 100% on board with CC, but they're just kind of along for the ride a bit. And it kind of lays out why we do classical education. And then the second book here, The Habits of a Classical Education. This is Lee's new book that she, it's available to pre-order right now. And if you order it now, you'll get a signed copy, but it will be in the sale in April, but that won't get you the signed copy. So just so you know about that coming in. But this is sort of a replacement. If you've been in CC very long, you've probably heard about the core of the question and the conversation. And when she wrote the core, that was about 12, 13 years ago now. And she has since decided that, there's a lot of people who have not, their parents haven't necessarily raised them on modeling for them how to teach their own kids. So this is more like grandmotherly wisdom, like holding your hand as you're walking through. How do you actually teach your child to pay attention? Or how do you teach your child how to learn to memorize? So it's much more like grandmotherly advice. It's a little less, there is some visionary stuff in there, but there's also a lot of very practical wisdom. And I'm not sure why, but my camera isn't working now. So can you guys see me? Or did I just go black?
I can see you.
You can? Okay. On my screen, it just shows me as like an icon, but that's fine. If you guys can see me, that's good. Because I was going to start holding up some books. So it wouldn't work if my camera's not working. Okay, so the next three I'm going to highlight. So this is important. These are obviously not essentials things. So I don't want to, you're probably like, why are we talking about these things? I think it is so important that we feed ourselves so that, like they say, put your own oxygen mask on before you help the person next to you on a plane. You really, really need to be feeding yourself a diet of why you're doing this. Feed yourself inspiration, because when it gets to be January, February, March, and it's all gray and dreary, you need to remember why you're slogging through and doing these hard things. Because nobody, like, I'd love to say that homeschooling is always like sunshine and rainbows, but honestly, it does get hard. And that is part of the sanctification process that we're in as Christians. But having inspiration and understanding why we're doing, and filling also like the how you do things, the why we do things. So these are fabulous books. I always say this wrong, the Paideia of God, I really like. This is just a collection, actually this and Repairing the Ruins are both just collections of essays written. So you could pick this up and just read that essay. You don't have to read the entire book through. So it's particularly good for the younger ages where you're kind of scrambling around sometime and you're not ready to wade through a deep, long book like Norms and Nobility or something. There are some controversial things in the Paideia of God about teaching disabilities, but I thought it was an excellent perspective to consider. So just a plug for that. Also, Repairing the Ruins has an awesome chapter on math, teaching math that I love. So a lot about scriptural worldview, egalitarianism. He has a chapter on that. It's not necessarily talking about gender egalitarianism. It brought a new perspective for me in that way. And then Case for Classical Christian Education. A lot of these books they put in the challenge levels as parent resources, but to me the problem is if you haven't fed yourself why classical Christian education is important, if you haven't read some of these essays before then, by the time you get to challenge age, you might have actually dropped out because you don't know why you're doing these weird things like classical education. It is different than your neighbors. So when your neighbors or your brother with his family is doing something so totally different, it can get hard to understand why you're slogging through it. So feeding yourself why you're doing these things is helpful. All right, so a couple other parent resources. War Against Grammar gives you a little bit of a context of why we are not teaching grammar the way we used to. Laura Ingalls Wilder learned how to diagram sentences, and she learned how to write, elaborate writing assignments. But we're not teaching that anymore in the common schools, and that includes private schools. And so this book kind of addresses why is that. Our Mother Tongue is excellent as a mom's resource. Sometimes I read through my EEL guides, my essentials guides, and I just need to hear it from a different perspective. Also, as a tutor, it's very helpful because sometimes I need sample sentences to use. I know there's a couple people talking about that you might be tutors next year. This gave me, sometimes I would try to make up sentences on the fly. It always worked out terribly because I'll tell you, the closer I am to a whiteboard, the lower my IQ is. So having some things tabbed out, already chosen for me to model sentences is really helpful. But also if I'm at home and my student is struggling to understand something that I've tried several ways to try to teach them and it's not working, grabbing that book, pulling it out, and seeing how, if we can find a different way to talk about it. Another little side thing about this book is on the little like margin areas, there are these history of the English language type tidbits that got me so excited. And I should have put this in a slide, but there is actually a podcast called the History of the English Language Podcast. It's over 180 episodes now, and it is fascinating. But it takes in addition to like what we learn in essentials class, but also this podcast and in Our Mother Tongue, it helps me realize how beautiful and consistent the English language is. You hear people talk about it as being nonsense. It just doesn't, it's so inconsistent. Why bother to understand it? Well, if you know the history behind it, and if you know the structure of the English language, it is actually beautifully consistent. So it's very inspiring to me. Anyway. All right, getting back on, and I already talked about, there's the Words Aptly. Oh, there's a book club on Our Mother Tongue too, where they discuss why this is a chosen resource for parents. So we're going to get into to required. Let's see, link to the podcast. Yeah, I'll put that on if I don't put that podcast link at the end, just poke me and remind me. All right, so your required resources, you're going to have your EEL, what we just call your essentials guide. It can get kind of confusing because we talk about the essentials overall class, but then we have what we call the essentials component of essentials. So it's the essentials of essentials. So that's just your little guide. It comes in, there's 3 different portions to it. And if you go on CC Connected, and I'll show you this in a minute, and it talks you how to break that down. When you get it in shrink wrap, it is, you'll be like, what am I supposed to do with this? There's videos about how to put that in a binder, how to organize it. A lot of people have different strategies for that. There's a student portion of that, and then there's an answer key section to that, but you'll want your charts in such a way that your student can either use them on a dry erase or have a way that they can reuse them over and over again. And then the center there, you see the teaching, writing, structure, and style. That is the new cover. I don't know if I brought my copy down with me. The old cover, no, I didn't bring it, I guess. The old cover looks a little different. So what most of us are used to looks a little different. It's got more blue on it, but they are coming out with a new edition of that. We have not been, like, this is brand new information to like everybody in the homeschool world. So we're all scrambling, just trying to see, okay, how much has changed? It's my understanding it hasn't changed dramatically. It's just made to be a little bit more easy for people to find when they're watching the videos, to find the section in the book that they're looking for. And I think there's a little bit more simplified language. I think it's really sad, but our culture is devolving at an astonishing rate. And so that people really, sometimes they just need things a little bit more simply. So I think they're keeping some of the original language, but also adding some simplified language to help. And honestly, he sells to public school teachers, and that's what he is encountering when he starts working with public educators. He finds that he has to simplify the language to people who are teaching English language in public schools. So that's just astonishing to me. Anyway, so this isn't available in the bookstores yet. It should be available in April or May, but we'll get more information about that as we know. On the right-hand side, you'll see these are our spiral bound. This is where we get our source text for what we're going to be writing on. We will be phasing these out, not next year, but the following year, and I'll explain why in a moment. But you will need both the parent copy and the student copy. They both include the source text that you're going to be writing off of, but the parent's guide it kind of gives information on, okay, so what is a sample of what you should expect from your student? So it's really hard to evaluate your student or to get the tips that you need to follow along with that if you don't have the parent guide or the teacher guide, because you are the teacher, not your tutor. Your tutor guides the parents, and then the parents guide the student. Okay, so you do need those. But because people are treating, so a lot of people are ignoring the teaching, writing, structure, and style, which is that center one there, and they're not going and getting the training and watching the videos. They are treating these like workbooks, and they're leaning on these a little too hard. And so we've decided that we're going to actually discontinue using these, not next year, but in 2027. And we're going to produce our own just a source text so that parents will lean more into the original program, which is the teaching, writing, structure, and style, lean into those videos. And I'm really excited about that, having tutored essentials and finding that frustration that parents weren't getting the training that they needed. I feel like sometimes the more help you offer people, like with these spiral bound workbooks, the more it's easy to settle back and just rely on those things instead of learning the actual techniques, which is vital. Okay, so these are some helpful extras, and I absolutely love these. These are called trivium tables, and when you look on the catalog and on the website, you can't necessarily tell what they are, but they actually fold open. And we have these for the trivium tables work like this. All the trivium tables for, challenge or for foundations, they are like these, there's 8 different panels. They work together. So for us, we do a lot of car school. And so I'm not going to bring my whole essentials binder with me everywhere we go. We go to the park. We're often at doctor's offices. My one son goes to physical therapy every day. And so we can just grab these and take them with us wherever we go. So for example, this is our noun charts, because they will be copying a lot of charts. There's where it's already filled out right here, but on the other side, there's a blank one. So they can start copying these, and they are color coded because in the beginning, you start off with where like the young students who aren't able to write as much, they might just be doing the shorthand version of it. And as they progress and their writing gets a little bit better, they'll do all the green bolded words. That's what they'll copy over here. And then by the time they're in their 3rd tour, they're expected to copy the whole chart onto here. And this is dry erase, you wipe it off. And these are not the ones that my daughter had because they've updated these since then. But I'll tell you, they last a long time. These particular ones have been through 2 students in my house. And then I also loaned these out to somebody else, and then they bounced back to me. And they are still holding up really strong. They're usually like, I don't know exactly how much they are. I think they're like $12.50 each, but they've definitely, they've been really, really helpful for us. In addition, the analytical tasks, there's this whole center section that folds out for doing what you call your quid et quo, where you dissect a sentence in detail. And then there's a flow chart for how to do that on the back. So these are something I really love. That have been very helpful in our family. And a couple of helpful extras. So a lot of people don't realize, so the grammar and diagramming sentences, this is not completely consistent. There's different methods and strategies for diagramming sentences. They all are fine. They're just ways to help our brains think analytically. There are some differences in how this book diagrams than in how CC and a lot of other programs do, but it's still really, really useful. This is another good tutor resource for when you want to practice diagramming sentences, because it's broken down into what kind of sentences you're going to be working on, like simple sentences, complex, compound, complex, etc. Also, a lot of people don't realize that Essentials has a spelling component to it, like a more full language arts. And you'll see there's these little excerpts in your Essentials guide where it says, I think it's just like SP word list is how it's abbreviated. And that's saying spelling plus. That is the spelling plus word book, spelling book. I didn't bring that down with me, but these are word lists. I think it's the 1,000 most used and most misspelled words in the English language. And you go through systematically. It talks to you about the process for doing that each day. And that's also on CC Connected. If you, and I'll show you this in a little bit, the online magazine, they're assuming that when you get to the spelling charts, they're assuming that you know about the Spelling Plus program. And then dictation is also very important because it's how students get from, when you have a thought in your brain, it takes a little bit to process it to get it down onto paper, and doing dictation exercises helps make that process a lot easier because there's a lot more steps in that than you might realize. We take it for granted. Oh, I have a thought, I just write it out. But practicing dictation really helps students as they're learning to write papers. All right, so math drill extras, of course, we have our multiplication flashcards. Those are, I like these ones because it shows the commutative law and that, you know, like 7 times 6 is the same as 6 times 7. But really any flashcards from you can get from the, you know, what is it called? The Target spot bins or, you know, the spotted bins, something like that. But an additional one that we like is these, oh, I forget what they're called now off the top of my head. Let's see if they're, what's the official name? I always give it the wrong name. No, I don't see it here. But it's basically there's, and you can print these off online. They're for free online on CC Connected. But if you want them printed out, you just put them in page protectors and in a binder, and the kids can just dry erase copy their math facts. So sometimes when Ransom or Frederick are getting tired of doing the flashcards, I say, okay, we'll just go ahead and write them out instead, and don't downplay the importance of copy work. Quick Flip Arithmetic is really good for using a standard deck of cards for math games. It's just a resource of a lot of different ideas to keep your kids engaged. The math trivium tables, I used to use a whole lot as a math tutor, although Math Map is getting a lot better. Math Map, I feel like this was how Lee Bortons was dabbling in writing math curriculum, like, you know, 15 years ago before she created the Math Map. So it is really good for having discussions about math with your students and understanding that a number like the number 6 can be expressed in, I think she has it as something like 36 different ways without getting into complex math. A couple extras. So the portable walls, that is similar to our trivium tables, although it's not laminated like our trivium tables are. We use this, like another one for car school. When we were writing, first off, it breaks down, it's a reminder for the different units, what you're focusing on for the unit. So as a mom, sometimes I'm like, wait, what are we doing this week? What's the structure? Okay, I can just go look at unit 3. Oh yeah, and that's a quick reminder to me of how it works. But also, if I don't have a thesaurus with me, or if I don't have all my binder and with all my lists of substitutes for said or ly adverbs, it's a list of all those things. So this is really, really good for car school. We tuck our papers in here and then we take them with us. These aren't as durable as the trivium tables, but they still work pretty well for us over the years. I can usually one of these will last for 2 kids if I have decently, you know, gentle kids. Some of my rougher kids destroy them by the end of their 3 years in essentials. I did put the videos on there because as a mom, personally, I ended up just going ahead and buying the videos because I want to be able to watch them when I like. They are expensive, but if you are the first parent, if your first child is going through and you have several other kids coming alongside, you want to, like, sometimes it's just go ahead and buy the videos and watch them, but that's up to your discretion. They are a little pricey, but for us, it was worth it. Synonym Finder is just another handy resource that we use because a lot of times you're looking for more than just what's in the portable walls or in the IEW programming stuff. And my kids use that all the way through Challenge. Online resources. It says it's got only 5 minutes left in the meeting. I hope it doesn't just stop automatically. So we'll see what it does. So CC Online's resources, you'll want to go in there over the summer and see what's available. You're going to click on Learning Center and you can there's the first things where they'll walk you through. There'll be a very short snippet about what Essentials is. But there's also stuff on there, like there's a CC Connected Digital Directory. This is the video. This is the example of the video about how to set up your student notebook. Little video to watch through. But the thing that you want to keep in mind, there's also a thing about why copy work. Why do we do copy work? And then these are the spelling lists that I was telling you about. You can print off these like magazines, so to speak. It also lists what to do each week. These are like weekly checklists. You don't need these, but if you want this sort of thing, that's good. But keep in mind, sometimes basics is better. So sometimes, like my best homeschool years, I usually don't go online at all for stuff. But if you are a mom who wants to do a lot of prep work over the summer, this is a good place to put your time, is going on CC Connected and seeing this stuff. Don't feel like it's necessary, and I would not do it throughout the year because don't think that you're going to print these out every week, because when it's February and the kids are sick and you're sick, but you're still trying to keep up, you're not going to print these off. You're just going to give up and quit. So, okay. So, yeah, Amanda, if you have to go ahead and go, do you have a few minutes for questions? We can do some parent Q&A. I think she did have to go, but I could probably handle a lot of the questions. So let me go through the ones that are in the chat to make sure I hit them all. I got the, the September 30th. Your child does not need to be familiar with the math map to be able to understand the math component because math is the same in all curriculum. So you do not have to do math map. That's a misconception a lot of people have. So they will touch on math map in class sometimes, depending on the tutor, but no, they don't need to be familiar with the math map. And the tutor might hold up the booklet and say, hey, this is what they're doing in math map this week, but they're not expected to know all the content in there. And then let's see, what else do we have? So that was a list of the things that we need to purchase. I hope I hit everything there. Is there a specific age they can start Challenge A? Yes, they need to be 12, and I believe that's the same cutoff date. Haley, is that right? September 30th, they have to be 12 by September 30th to start Challenge A?
Yes, I tried to attach a little thing from the family application.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you can see it, but it has all of the challenge ones.
Yes, so challenge 12, or sorry, Challenge A, you have to be 12, and then it's sequentially after that. And you have to keep in mind, some people are like, well, I have a very smart, precocious child that can do a lot of things, but keep in mind, they're going to be talking about some topics when you get up into like Challenge B1, etc. That there's also maturity, like emotional maturity things there, not just intellectual ability. So when people try to race their kids through, you're not doing your child, you're not doing them any good, really, doing that. Stick with the age. If anything, slow them down. I slowed one of my kids down, as I already mentioned, and I think that was a very smart thing for me to do. But I will be having him go all the way through Challenge 4 because I do think the whole program works together, and you really do want that last year to solidify the previous learning. So, all right, so I covered a lot of stuff. Any other, yeah, and Haley wrote some things in the chat there. That's very helpful. Thank you, Haley. You're awesome. And then the podcast that I mentioned, I'll just type that here in the chat. And then if anybody else has questions, feel free to shoot them out at me. And let's see if I can find the actual podcast link. And there's a lot of essentials tutors that geek out over this too. He has a whole thing about Beowulf, about the history of the alphabet. He has a subset series on that. So I'm going to grab the YouTube just so you can. I'll just grab the YouTube channel because I don't know if I can find his actual. Oh no, I'll find his website. His website here is, and I'll put that in the chat. Okay, the link to his website is in the chat there. And you can find that. It's easy to find on Apple, Spotify, a lot of different places. So let's see if I hit everything else. Yeah, so that's basically it. So if we have no further questions, this is my coupon code. It's only good for March 31st. It gives you, if you spend $75, you get a free flashcard or Trivium table. The free flashcards does include the MathMat flashcards or these memory cards, which I love because they keep my kids off a tablet, because like people use the tablets and stuff for reviewing memory work, but I like to use these personally without getting such wear and tear on my foundations guide by, towing that around to the park and stuff. So those are free if you use that coupon code. And then aside from that, yeah, that's basically all we've got. Don't forget that we have the rest of the March Madness events coming up. And there's the new product blitz is 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. It is another long meeting, and I talk really fast through that one too, but it is about an hour and a half. And then my pop-up bookshop is March 28th, which is a Saturday. It'll be midday. You can click there to register. If you're in any sort of leadership position, so like if you're a director, LCD, et cetera, you can come the night before to kind of get a preview of that. And that way, if you have concerns like about some of the new products that you have questions about, we can talk one-on-one there without you feeling like you have to take care of your people who will also be attending. So, and again, those are the practicum dates, and that's all she wrote. So if nobody has any other questions, I'll go ahead and sign off then, because I think we are right at an hour and 30 minutes. So I kind of kept to the schedule. So, all right. Well, thank you, everybody. You have a great night.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
my pleasure. Reach out if you have any questions.
Thanks, Krista.
Yep, my pleasure.